Welcome back to Politics Nation. Let's dive into a few topics with my political panel. Joining me now is Bree Maxwell, Democratic strategist and principal of and CEO of Indigo Consulting, and Michael Steele, a political analyst and former RNC chairman. Michael, this coming Tuesday, Ohio will hold their Senate primary. It's a tight race for Republicans between Donald Trump's pick, J.D. Vance, State Treasurer Josh Mandel, and moderate Republican Matt Dolan is having a last-minute surge. Now, Trump's influence will be put to the test during this primary to see if he's actually a kingmaker when selecting candidates. This race has also shown how contenders like Dolan is willing to go against the grain and call out Trump instead of bowing down to him. What's your take on this particular Senate primary?
Yeah, that last point, Rev, is an important one because Dolan, unlike what we saw in the Youngkin race for governor in Virginia, is actually leaned a little bit into the Trump narrative, making it very clear that he's not going to play that game. What's interesting is that, to your point, he has begun to show some energy, some growth in the polling. J.D. Vance also had that growth as well. And so it makes this race not just competitive from the numbers, but really competitive from where the Republican base will align itself. Not just that typical base that shows up, Reverend, but more importantly, whether or not, they're able to pull out voters who typically don't play in primary elections. You know, Democrats and Republicans always have the struggle with getting rank and file Republicans and Democrats to show up outside of the more traditional conservative and progressive or left voters. So this will be a real test to see if that effort is able to materialize in a substantive way that will give, the non-Trump candidate a leg up.
Bree, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said earlier that his agency is preparing for as many as 18,000 migrants daily after lifting of Title 42 COVID restrictions at the end of May. Now, Senate Republicans oppose ending Title 42 and are threatening to block other Democratic priorities, such as $33 billion in Ukraine aid and $10 billion in COVID relief, if the White House doesn't back off of its plan to end Title 42. Democrats themselves are split over whether to end the Trump-era restrictions. How do you think this dispute gets resolved?
Well, we all know that this was a Trump administration ploy to make sure that we could make sure that migrants and immigrants were not coming to this country. And also the CDC and other public health officials said that this is no longer needed. And many have stated that it was never needed in the first place. So at this point, I believe the Biden administration's biggest issue will be the courts. And the courts should slowly start rolling back these policies to make sure that there are legal pathways for migrants to be able to come to this country. Will it have an effect on the midterms? Yes, but it will only have an effect in certain districts.
Now, Bree, let's talk about President Biden's poll numbers. The Washington Post and ABC News show the president's approval rating is up 5 percentage points from February at 42%. His economic approval rating also went up slightly, 37% to 38%. What's your gauge on how well the president is doing?
Well, the good news is that his points are slowly coming up. So what this does mean is that the Biden administration and Democrats are slowly working on ways to restore the trust and faith back into the American people for the Democrats and the Democratic policies. So I think we're going into the midterms. We will see how much faith and trust that the Americans have with Biden and the administration going forward. Americans are a little bit happy with how he is handling the COVID-19, but, a lot of them are still upset and still frustrated because they're still hurting with inflation and their pocketbooks are still hurting. Yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see with the midterms.
Michael, Donald Trump will be in Nebraska tonight. He's holding a rally for his longtime friend, Charles Herbster, who is running to become the Republican nominee for governor. This comes as the New York Times reports Herbster is being accused of groping a second woman at a 2019 Republican fundraising event. He denies both allegations. There's two against him. Trump has not distanced himself from his candidate and has since doubled down on his support. How damaging are these accusations for Herbster?
Yeah, probably not that damaging at all. In fact, it's probably keeping with the brand. What we're seeing now is the Republican Party writ large, and certainly larger elements of the base, don't factor those things in. It doesn't matter that you've been alleged to, having relations with people outside of your spouse, or groping individuals, or even borderline pedophilia. I mean, we've seen this going back to the 2018 cycle, that these issues are less and less important to that base. I think partly because there has not been a cohesive counter-narrative played up, as we see the right going after the left on things related to cultural issues. You do not see that counter punch from the left saying, okay, I know what you're saying about me, but what about this laundry list? I mean, the Cawthorn narrative alone should have been a huge political fodder for the left, and yet most of the damage is being inflicted by fellow Republicans who are like trying to do the Heisman with this guy. So,
when you say the Cawthorn, for our viewers, you're talking about when he accused many of engaging in drugs and orgies and the like. Yeah. And the left didn't really chime in at all. Other Republicans
didn't chime in. And then we had the pictorial last week with him in women's lingerie. Yeah. So, I don't know how much of a gift can be handed to the left politically to sort of create this wedge on the culture issues, because it is clear the Republicans are up to their eyeballs in a cultural narrative that stands as a lie to their rhetoric.
Now, if they had a member of the so-called squad that was a man in women's lingerie, I'm sure we would be seeing that in high rotation. You're right about that. Bree, the White House Correspondents' Dinner was held last night. I was there, among others. It was the first dinner after a 2-year hiatus. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden was there, which marks the first time a sitting president will have been at the event since Barack Obama in 2016. Here's some of what he had to say last night.
The free press is not the enemy of the people. Far from it. The truth matters. American democracy is not a reality show. It's not a reality show. It's reality itself.
Now, what was the significance of last night's dinner after the controversy of the Trump years and the challenges of the pandemic?
Well, the significance of the dinner was basically to get back to what I stated earlier, to restore faith and trust back into the American people. And also with his poll numbers being so low, to get back in front of the people and let him know, look, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that we can get the country back to where we were, to get back to the glory days. Because we also know that the Biden administration basically had to pick up the pieces that were falling from the Trump administration. So I think what he was able to do is just basically make some Americans happy and just get us back to where we need to be.
Bree Maxwell and Michael Steele, thank you both for being with us.